This is the Persons of Interest podcast, diving into careers, personal stories, life lessons, and more, featuring interviews with interesting people doing interesting things. And now, here's your host, Derek Dockett.
Pleased to be joined by the owner, operator, editor, manager of the Victory Bell, which covers everything about the Valparaiso Beacons. He's also a lecturer, a teacher at the university, or at Valparaiso University. Paul Oren, I guess I was going to say it's been a while, but it hasn't. We had a chance to catch up back in March at Arch Madness. How's things going?
I mean, it's Arch Madness is it's getting fewer and fewer, but every year it's like an annual reunion for a lot of us that have been around. And Derek, you've been so gracious and welcoming me into the Valley when Valpo joined. And now I look around in those rooms and I'm the dean of the beat reporters, although my guy Todd at Indiana State's coming back. Yeah. So I don't know how that quite works, but I'm thrilled to be here. This is such a fun thing that you do. And I was honored to get a request to join.
No, I appreciate it. Honestly, it's sort of my own fault. I don't do it enough. I sort of ebb and flow with the episodes. But I learn a little bit, something new out of, every interview. And most of these interviews I do, folks I know, but I always try to sort of dig a little bit deeper to find out something. But I guess first off, talk about Victory Bell. I know that's been a project of yours that you've been handling really, really well. But I'm also curious from another aspect, but just how's it progressed in the years since you've been doing it? And I guess what were the goals when you first set out? Because I know it's not easy covering a team, especially coming from, you're writing for the local paper in Northwest Indiana, but now doing it on your own and trying to grow it. How's it been going so far?
Yeah, thanks. It's been a blast. A little bit of background is I wear a number of different hats. And one of them was a longtime sports writer in Northwest Indiana, which we affectionately know as the region. And high school sports pushes a lot. Yeah. I wasn't a big time athlete growing up. My career ended in 8th grade due to lack of talent. Right. And so, I never had like the romanticism about high school sports that a lot of other people have. Right. And I'm from a city. And so I grew up watching Marquette. I'm from Milwaukee. I grew up watching Marquette and it's a pro sports town as well. And so high school sports never really did it for me. And so I get to the region in 2005 and I get hired as a sports reporter, and all I wanted to do was cover college, right? Like that was the dream for me. And because pro felt a little too lofty. In high school, I was like, why do people care so much? Yeah. And then I realized I was naive, right? As I got older, I realized, okay, high school sports is kind of like what pushes, that's what pays the bills, right? And look, I've fallen in love with covering high school sports in the region. But in 2021, I'm 41 years old at that time. We're coming out of the pandemic. And I'm spending so much of my time just sitting around waiting for 14 to 18-year-old kids to call me back to talk to a guy who writes for a thing that they don't read, right? And then I'm trying to get coaches on the phone, and like I have a day job, they have a day job, and then I got to get to their practice, but I'm not going to get to their practice on time. And so now I'm cutting into like that 2-hour window they get with their spouses. And and also I want my own personal time. Right. And so long story short, I said, I got to be done with the high school angle. I just can't do this anymore. My passion is college. And so at the same time, I said, how can I create something where I'm my own, where I set the schedule, right? So if a coach doesn't call me back, I'm not leaving 3 editors in a lurch, right? I can just deal with it. So that was Derek, that was the goal, right? We talk about what are the goals. The goal was, how can I make it so my schedule is a little bit more manageable and I can chase my passion, which is college athletics. And now, again, I wear some multiple hats at Valpo, but none of these local reporters at the time, Northwest Indiana Times, cared about college. All they cared about was high school. So I said, well, hey, pick me. I want to write about college. That's how I kind of got into that. And is there a conflict of interest? Of course there is. And I'm sure we might get into that at some point. But for me, going back to the Victory Bell, I then spent several months testing out, where was I going to do it? Was I going to do a WordPress blog? Was I going to do something else? And I settled on Substack, and it's been fantastic. And it's been just over 2 years. Every day feels like trial and error, but I've grown it, right? I've made more money, and it's not about the money. Let's be clear about that. If these jobs were about the money, you and I'd be doing something way different, right? But I will say this. I've made more money in the first 4 months of 2024 than I did in the first year that I launched the site.
Okay.
So that's good, right?
Yeah.
That's good. That said, I still feel like, and I'm not greedy about the money, I feel like the reach could be more, right? I look at like the amount of subscribers I have, and I'm blessed with the fact that over 1,000 people have signed up to get emails from me. I'm blessed that 450 of them right now have decided to give me money for that, right? Valpo's got over 1,000 season ticket subscribers for basketball. How come I don't have all of them, right? Like, if you care enough to buy season tickets, shouldn't you care enough to subscribe? So I'm trying to solve that equation. And I think this is the challenge, Derek, how do you grow a company like this, a company? How do you grow a thing like this in a world where I have people coming up to me saying, oh, I like what you do. I just wish it was print. Or on the flip side, I like what you do. I just wish it was a 10-second TikTok video. And so you're trying to meet both ends of that. Right. And I don't know how to do that. And so it's trial and error. It's been a blast. And I'm blessed with having the, I guess, financial flexibility and professional flexibility and personal flexibility to do all this trial and error all the time. So very long-winded answer. That's what I got for you.
That's good. That's good. While you were responding, that popped in another question in my head, because so the company that I work for now, we experience something similar. We do communications for school districts, and growth is a thing, and continually trying to find ways to make your product, make your business valuable to an end user is a thing. So you say that, you talk about growth, and that core folks of Valpo basketball season ticket holders that, quite frankly, would be interested in reading your content. Why not are they doing it? And I'm curious to know, have you put thought into, is there something that you're not doing that you would be willing to sort of tiptoe in and see? I ask that because I'm always of the mindset of, I don't care about throwing a dart. If it sticks, great. If it's a bullseye, even better. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and I move on. Have you put any thought into something that this is the next pathway that you might go down?
I'm brainstorming every day about how to try to reach out to new people. And it's funny. I know that there is I know that there's an opportunity to double my business immediately. I just haven't given myself the grace to do it because I don't know that I want to do it. There's a local high school in town, Valparaiso High School. There are 47 high schools around here, by the way.
Which is also kind of crazy.
North Indiana time. But Valpo High School is it's 5 minutes from my house.
Okay.
And if I just said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cover high school football. I'm going to cover Valpo High School football, and I'm going to cover Valpo High School boys and girls basketball. If I just did those three sports, I bet I would almost double.
Really?
Overnight. I would think. Valpo football is year in, year out really good. Valpo basketball's got a rising senior named Jack Smiley, who's a Division I prospect. Valpo VU's recruiting him big time. They've got a junior, rising junior girls basketball player, Lily Barnes, really good. Has been offered by Ohio State, been offered by all the big schools, right? I just don't know that I want to do that for the reasons I talked about before. They don't have a sports information director, right? Like, then all of a sudden, here I am, the guy just going to the high school all the time and trying to get 14 to 18-year-olds to talk to me, and coaches who would rather spend time. So that's something, Derek, that if I think, and I've got a lot of people who love what I've done for VU, who are also Valpo High fans, who are saying, you should do this, you should do this. The newspapers aren't covering us like they used to. You can do this. So that's one thing. I haven't done any advertising, and that's another thing that, I mean, am I leaving money on the table by doing that? Probably. What's the apparatus for doing advertising? I'm not really sure. Substack doesn't have a built-in advertising model. They actually, they don't tell you yet that you can't, but they don't really support it.
Gotcha.
And then, just trying to get out and talking to more people. And I think the biggest thing, and I'm going to probably catch some flack for this if they were to hear it, but the older generation that is not wild about giving their credit card information out to, I mean, I can't fight that, right? Like that, I get it. That's an issue. And I also know that I'll probably catch something for this, but like, I'm not covering a winning basketball team right now, and let me tell you, it's not for them not trying, right? Like, I think they're going to be pretty good this coming year, and I think it's going to be really exciting to watch. That said, I'd like to think I launched the Victory Bell with a month and a half left in a bad basketball season. And then there was a bad basketball season after that, and a bad basketball season after that happened to come with a new coach and a lot of excitement. I really wonder what this would have looked like in a world where Valpo was winning 20 games a year like they used to do all the time. Yeah. And so I don't know if they can get this thing turned around. I'm not naive enough, or I'm not egotistical enough to sit here and say, oh, my site would be doing so much better if the team would win. Because it's not, you can control what you can control. I hope they do win because they're good people, and it'll be fun to see maybe what the subscription numbers look like if they turn it around and get it going.
Yeah, well, it's a matter of fact. I mean, winning cures all. I mean, people would buy tickets to games if the team is winning. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. And the interest level becomes higher. And guess what? If you're providing content about the team that another entity isn't, then there you go. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. So I don't think you're going to get flack over that, but it's just sort of one of those things where we talk about tickets and people going to games in this age of streaming and subscriptions online. That's just how things are nowadays. So
let me just add this before we transition. I will say this, covering a team that's not winning makes you a better reporter, in my belief. It was really easy to write about wins all the time. And I was blessed coming up as a young journalist of covering coaches and athletes who are happy all the time. Now it's a challenge, but you still got to show up, right? You still got to be there. And as much as the readers might say, hey, I'm out, I don't care about this team, they're not winning. As a reporter, if you do that, you'll never get to talk to people again when they do start winning. So I'm still showing up. I'm still there. Valpo basketball went 12-50 last year combined, men's and women's basketball, and I was there, and we're going to be there again next year.
I'm glad you said that, because that's a good transition to what I want to talk about next, because I'm sure you're probably instilling that into young minds at Valpo, because you're in the classroom there. Communication, and things like that. I guess, first of all, talk about what you teach, because I'm curious, and what it's like teaching in this age of social media, digital media, because I don't know if kids nowadays, are as interested in newspapers, because, Sports Illustrated isn't a thing like you and I know it. So I'm curious of, how you're finding that to be teaching kids and ultimately what they think they want to do if they want to go into that field of journalism or whatever it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Look, I love teaching and I love writing. And there are days when I think to myself, am I a professor who writes on the side, or am I a journalist who teaches on the side? And those two mindsets that are going on kind of battle with each other a lot. I have a radio background. I did radio all through college. I was a broadcaster, and then I went and worked at a rock radio station in Milwaukee for a couple of years. But I wanted to get back into sports. I graduated right after 9/11, and there was no need for sports journalists right at that time. And so I went and worked at this rock radio station. But in 2005, when I came back to the region to be a reporter for the Times, I had called up my academic advisor and said, I stayed in contact with him and said, do you know of anything out there? And he said, come teach. And I laughed out loud a lot, right? And he said, no, he goes, we need a new radio professor. You have real world experience. Come teach. And so I say that to answer the beginning part of your question. It was rooted in me in my opening time of teaching. What I brought to the table for the students was my real world experience, right? The fact that I had been out there in that scary place that we call there, and I hate the phrase real world, but I had been out there. And so I was going to bring that in. And I told myself the day that I stopped being able to relate to the students because I'd sat in their chair was the day that I was out. I think maybe that day might have come and gone, and I'm still here. And part of that is because I love teaching. Didn't think I was going to growing up. I mean, it's not students ask me every once in a while, like, when did you know you wanted to be a college professor? I was like, my 4th year of teaching. That was when I found out. So, it is a challenge, right? I teach intro to media, mass media. I've been teaching that class since 2006. Probably taught that class something like more than 50 times. And that is a class that's just an overview of the entire media industry. Now, I would love to go back and watch lectures in 2006 compared to today, right? Sure. In 2008, we launched a class called Social Media. I'm teaching that. I'm starting another version of that next week. And that class, Derek, this is so funny. That class was a night class geared toward grad students where each week when we started it, like tonight was going to be Facebook. I'm going to teach you about Facebook. I'm going to teach you how to create a profile. I'm going to teach you about the privacy settings. I'm going to teach you what the news feed is, what the wall is, why poking someone is something silly that you don't really do, right? Next week is Twitter. The week after that is MySpace, right? And it was all about just how to interact on all these sites. Fast forward 5 years, and all of a sudden it became, okay, let's talk about how to use marketing in social media. Companies are starting to do this. What is a hashtag? Why is that important? What is an influencer? How is that important? And now today, if I walked into class and I said, okay, today we're going to teach you how to create a Facebook profile, they would laugh at me, right? Like, so the evolution of that. I teach a bunch of sports journalism classes. I did some radio classes until I stopped because people just aren't going to school for radio anymore. Yeah. We do have a podcasting class that I might teach soon. So really it's all of that stuff, right? Okay. It's just a little bit of everything. And then I'm really blessed. I teach our capstone senior project class where the final semester, all those seniors that I had, as freshmen a couple years ago, and that I had many other classes, they come in and we say, what's missing from your resume that you don't have? And so this isn't a hypothetical class project like, hey, we're going to do an action plan for, Bobby's Bakery. It's not that, right? Let's go find a client that needs help. Do they need social media help? Great. Do they need a new website? Great. Do they need X, Y, or Z? And that's a lot of fun to see those projects take hold.
Nice. My mind is turning because these are things that obviously, I'm super interested in now that I never took in college. I was graphic design and sort of just picked up everything, on the fly and doing it. And I tell people this, that at my time working in the Valley, my predecessor had just started the social media profiles, the Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channel, and took another job, and they were set up. So it's just up to me to sort of pick them up and go. Over the course of, 7.5, 8 years, you can see a whole lot of change from 2010 to 2017 or early 2018 when I left, of content there. Because it was all changing on the fly, like Twitter in 2011, no GIFs. And then 15, 16, 17, it's become all the rage. And you're then making custom GIFs. And, all of a sudden I'm making player of the week graphics to player of the week GIF. It's just, you see how things change. A podcasting class intrigues me as an avid podcaster.
Yeah.
And I listen to podcasts all day long. I often think, what am I not doing that could be better? When you're teaching these classes, are you getting challenged from the kids because of all this stuff? It's specifically the social media stuff, the digital media stuff. It's almost like we take it in. We take in so much of it. Are you getting challenged from the students about, in a classroom setting when they see something like, oh, Pat McAfee's doing this. How do we get to that level, so to say?
Yeah. Look, I think that's a really good question, because there's the way the book tells you it should be done, and there's the way that it's actually done. And sometimes that's scary. I'll go back to my radio teaching early on. I taught sports journalism, sports broadcasting, and I would talk about how to do all these things. And then once I had a student say, well, Dick Vitale does it this way, or Gus Johnson does it this way. And I love Gus Johnson, right? Love Gus Johnson. Or Stephen A. Smith, or the Skip Bayless, Woody Payne, like they all do it that way. They scream loudly into a microphone, right, and it works for them. I love watching McAfee, and I love Bill Simmons, right? Like, and he's, during the NBA playoffs, it's really hard because I'm a Bucks fan, and it's, they're overpressed. But I see what they listen to a little bit. At least I did. And now it's like, they're coming at me with, well, Dave Portnoy said this. And I'm like, right, I'm not a Barstool guy. So I don't know. So yes, to answer your question, people do bring it into the classroom, and they do challenge a little bit. Like, hey, I saw this way and all of that. I actually was just talking to a student yesterday who, was trying to figure out the best way to get a job. And I said, look, all the great success stories that I know out there all got their jobs unconventionally, right? It was just, they went out with some drinks for a friend, they networked, they met somebody else. Or, I got my job as a professor kind of unconventionally, right? And which what I went on to say to him shows that there is no right way to do all of this stuff, right? In theory, yes, this is the way we do it. I want to go back to something that I just think is such a funny story that I think you'll appreciate, given the role you had. I started teaching the social media class in 2008 when no one had degrees in social media. Fast forward to 2016, I think it was. And now I've got a new boss at that time who comes up and says, 2015, 2016, I forget which year it was, comes up to me and says, why are you able to teach this social media class? We were right before spring break. She goes, you don't have a degree in social media. You don't have any background in this. Why are you qualified to do this? Okay, fine. She said, come back to me after spring break and talk to me. And she was a numbers driven person. That spring break, Valpo goes to the Horizon League Championship tournament in Detroit. It was right before Valpo went to the Valley. And the game before, I don't know, this is a Valpo game or whatever, the game before, Green Bay is playing, and Green Bay's play-by-play announcer is a guy named Matt Menzel. He's a great guy. And he is a hand talker. So he's standing up and he's talking with his hands, and it's pretty quiet in there because Motor City Madness didn't really get the crowds they were looking for. And so the ref makes a bad call, and he throws his hands in the air and says, what a terrible call. And the ref hears him, and Derek ejects him from the game. ejects him, the radio broadcaster. And so here I am, the only reporter on press row, tweeting like crazy about this, right? USA Today picks up my tweets. Wall Street Journal picks up my tweets. Every basketball national blog picks up my tweets. You know, whatever. I don't think anything of it until later on that night when like my tweets are getting favorited and retweeted like crazy. So fast forward like 2 weeks later, I go in to see my boss and she goes, "So why are you qualified to teach social media?" And I'm like, "Well, I got 4.5 million impressions last week. So you tell me who's good at social media." And again, it's unconventional.
Yeah.
It's throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping it sticks. And she looked at me and she goes, "Wow, you've really figured out social media." And I was like, "Yes, I have." And so there you go. And then I think the next week I probably got 20 impressions. I don't know, you know, like, and so it's just, this stuff is fleeting, but it's fun. And I'll go back, and I know you got more questions. I go back to what I thought in 2005, and I still think today in 2024, if I can just stay a day ahead of my students or 20 minutes ahead of my students, if I can just experience some of the stuff that they're going to learn about before they do, and then guide them through it, I think that's all you can ask as a teacher. I mean, look, I used to think that, and you know, this is evolution of me as a professor. I used to think, oh, because it happened to me this way, it'll happen to all my students this way. And that's not true. And now it's like, look, I've seen it. I've done it. You guys figure it out, but I'm going to stay 20 minutes ahead of you and try to help you along the way.
Which of your classes do you enjoy teaching the most?
Oh, gosh. Look, what? I don't have children, but which of your children do you love the most? I mean, that's, I'll tell you this. My favorite class, and this is not because I've coerced my university into paying me for pressing play on a video. I created a class called Journalism Through Film, where we offer this class like every other year. Every Tuesday night, we get together and we watch a movie about journalism. And then on Wednesdays, we get together for an hour and we talk about it. And I adore that class because I'm a big movie guy. I love watching movies. You know, as much as I love sports, and I do, I love being able to shut my mind off for a couple hours and suspend my disbelief. And so I do that. And the first two movies I show them, I start with Almost Famous, which is one of the great journalism movies ever. And then I hit them back with Good Night and Good Luck, which you really got to be attuned to what's going on to enjoy that movie. I think that movie is very educational. I don't necessarily know that it's an enjoyable movie, but I win them over with Almost Famous the first week. And they're like, "Oh, this class is going to be amazing." And then I hit them with a black and white movie the next week, albeit one from 2005. And I just say, guys, all you got to do is trust me, you know, like, trust me that each one of these movies is going to have a big journalistic theme. And I love that class. That class is my favorite one to teach.
Awesome. So you mentioned earlier that you Valpo basketball combined 12 and 50. You're in every game, covering the games. You're in the classroom at Valpo teaching kids. Is that a tough? Maybe it's not. Maybe because you've been doing it for years, even before, you know, doing the Victory Bell. What's that like? I guess, you know, working
it's
for
hard.
university and covering them, you know, in the ups and the downs.
Yeah, it's hard. Look, it was a lot easier when they were winning all the time.
Sure,
and it was a lot easier. It was a lot easier when I worked for a newspaper. And then I could be like, "Oh, hey, they changed the headline. That wasn't me," you know, like, or I'm, you know, I didn't realize they were going to run that photo. That wasn't me, you know? Look, I've been blessed at Valpo to, first of all, let me give a major shout out to Brandon Vickery and Aaron Levitt, the media relations guys. I mean, they're so good at what they do.
Yeah.
They're so, I could sing their praises in 10 podcasts and they would still be underappreciated, right? Like, and they as much as I walk a fine line, they walk a fine line, right? Like what, and so, I think for me, the biggest thing is, look, I'm going to see things on a day-to-day basis that reporters just wouldn't see. Someone walking around on crutches, right? Anything, right? Hey, I'm not in class this week because I've tested positive for COVID. Oh, but you're playing, or whatever. Maybe that's not exactly the best way to go about it. Like maybe you're back quicker than I thought you should have been with whatever. Like,
yeah,
I'm always of the belief that, look, if I tell them, you're not going to get an A if you hit the game-winning shot. You're not going to get an F if you miss the game-winning shot. I tried very hard to make sure that what happens in this building stays in this building. What happens over there, where it helps me, is relationship building.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
Like that's big. I try not to get involved in the eligibility aspects or anything like that, but it's natural. I mean, and again, I probably have fewer athletes in my classes than people would think. They're not all lining up to take them. But again, we just have real conversations. I've been blessed with Brandon and Aaron. I've been blessed with, Mark LaBarbera, Charles Small, and now Laurel Hosmer, athletic directors that I've sat down with and said, look, this is who I am. This is if it's a problem, you let me know. Right. And coaches that have been great. Right. Whether it be the basketball coaches or all the other coaches, and just saying, look, like you don't have to trust me, but I want you to trust me. I've got 20 years showing that this is okay. There have only been probably 2 times I can think of, like, when I really had a juicy piece of information that I learned away from being a reporter that I kind of had to sit on, because like I knew Valpo had a guy who was coming back a couple of years ago. He ended up leading the country in block shots, and he was getting a 5th year. And I knew that he had applied for grad school because I'd gotten an alert or something like that. And I was like, wait a minute, why is he applying for grad school? And because he should be out of eligibility. But Valpo didn't want to tell anybody that he was coming back because they knew that high major schools wouldn't schedule them if, in fact, he was coming back. And so I went over there. I said, look, is he coming back? And they're like, we're not saying a word, no comment, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, all right. I was like, I got to make this is a big story, but nobody else has it. So there's some journalistic integrity stuff of, like, sometimes things, but did I know them from being a reporter? Probably not. I came across that information by accident. All right. And then what has irritated me is when something like that happens, and then someone will be like, well, we can't, this guy knows too much and he's going to report it. I'm like, whoa, like, look at my track record. Like, what have I ever, but again, I'm picking one extreme. I have great relationships with all of them. And I've said to the coaches, look, if you win, I'm going to be right there. But if you lose, I'm going to be right there too. And I want to pivot for a second, because I know we're talking about the classroom, but I still think, even if you stripped away that, I think the humanity aspect is still so important.
Yes.
These are people that I get to see on a day-to-day basis. And so when a coach is underperforming and people are like, how come you're not calling for his head? That's not my job to do that. You have eyes. You can see that the coach is underperforming. My job is to capture the emotion of what that underperformance feels like. And so that was a real challenge with Matt Loddick, and Matt's, I don't want to say Matt's a friend. We don't hang out. Like, I've never been to his house. But Matt's as good of a human being as I've ever been around. And so that challenge is, like, do you crucify people in print and then have to show up the next day and ask them about X's and O's or anything about that? That's the part that doesn't sit well with me. And I don't care if I'm a professor or not a professor or whatever. Like, that's the hardest part of journalism, I think, is how do you criticize or critique and then show up the next day? And that's something that I've been doing this for 20 years and I still don't know how to do. Right. Yeah. And I just think it's hard. And I don't care about contracts. I don't care about how much money you make. I don't care about, like, that doesn't seem, I don't care, because you're a human being who's got
Right.
family, and I see those kids running around, and most of the fans, and I love Valpo's fans and fans in general, they don't get to see that on a day-to-day basis, and that's the challenge, I think.
You mentioned the relationships part of it all. I have to imagine being a reporter, going to practice, a coach post-game press conference, whatever it might be, but then also being there on campus in the classroom, that there's probably an aspect of, I don't want to say practicing what you preach, but you just said it. You've been doing this for so long that, in the back of your head, you just know what to do. You know what your regular routine is of being a reporter, a writer, but also what you want to teach kids in the classroom. I got to imagine that practicing what you preach comes with that experience, part of it as well, that, you're not going to teach something to kids that you're not doing already yourself.
Yeah. And look, we spend a lot of time talking about journalism ethics in a lot of my classes. We talk about media ethics. We talk about journalism ethics. And we talk about it in sports journalism, things like that. And I think that's vitally important to talk about. And I probably subconsciously talk about it a lot more because I'm aware of how, I don't want to say bad because I don't think that's the right word. I'm aware of what it looks like. I got friends of mine who are big time professional reporters who are like, how does the school let you do what you do? And it's just like, so I do feel a little bit of imposter syndrome a lot of times. Like, I'm confident now that I think I'm a good reporter. I think I'm a good writer, yada, yada, yada. Could I do this 24/7 at a different school that I didn't have a connection to? I'd like to think I could. I don't actually know because I never have done it. So there's a little bit of imposter syndrome there. But it's also, I think to myself, especially with the victory bell, it's been a shift in the last couple of years. I don't cheer for Valpo to win because it's ingrained in me not to, but man, do I cheer for the people.
Right.
And I'll say this, the Valpo women's soccer team this past year, I wrote a column where I basically said, this is what I'm going to remember about this team. And I had a specific line for every single player, because they're the greatest group of humans I've come across, right? And part of that is because I'm allowed to look at them a little bit differently than I would have if I was working for the Northwest Indiana Times, And I covered a lot of their matches, and I don't know a damn thing about soccer, but I know about people, and that group was amazing. And I wasn't shy telling people that. I think 15 years ago, I'd have been like, oh no, they might think that I'm a biased, slanted reporter. I don't even look at myself as a reporter anymore. I look at myself as a storyteller.
There you go.
They had a great story to tell. And sometimes I tell stories in the classroom. I tell stories through journalism. But to your point, I want to make sure that if I'm telling people how to do it in the classroom, that's how I'm doing it out there in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's shift gears here because I can't remember a college basketball start to the off season that seems to have been as sort of crazy and wild as the one. Well, it's not over. The portal closed, but off season obviously is far from over. I mean, summer's not really even started yet. But all the new coaches, the way I feel that just about every Missouri Valley team has been pilfered and deportalized. I don't even know what the correct term to use is, but and some from within the league. I mean, I can't think of a time I can think of a time when I was still working in the Valley that team players going from within the league to a team within the league was not a thing. And there was even, I'm not sure if I call it a league bylaw, but that just wasn't a thing.
Donovan Clay from Valpo to Missouri State was like the first real big one.
Yes. And intra-conference transfers was just not a thing. And you're right. Donovan Clay was like the most significant one in recent memory. But I guess from Valpo's perspective, with a coach going into his second year, and I'll be honest, I think because I'm a Missouri State guy and we've got a coaching change and pretty much going to see a completely different team next year, I've been paying a little bit more closer attention there. But obviously, I still, across the the spectrum of the Valley pay attention to it all. I don't think I have a good finger on the pulse of Valpo outside of what I see you tweet. But I'm curious because I feel like I don't think there's been a ton of turnover, but maybe there has. But from a new coach,
so this is really funny you say this. So, there's that meme of James Franco with a noose around his neck. That's like first time, and I remember I've thought of that. I don't even know what that's from. He's got like a little smirk on his face, and I just thought to myself, like, all these Valley teams are lamenting how terrible the transfer portal is this year. Valpo's been getting gutted left and right for years.
Every year,
This is business as usual. So to your point, like, yeah, it doesn't feel like that big of a deal. And then I realized that 7 guys are in the transfer portal from Valpo. But like, first time? Like, we've been doing this.
Yeah.
Valpo's had 4 different guys with the last name Edwards on their team for the last 4 years. Like, it's just, you cheer for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jersey. That's what the fans are looking at, and that's what makes it hard, I think. I was watching 2 nights ago the Fab Five documentary, which I adore. The Fab Five is what, behind me here on one of these shelves, I've got a bunch of autographed cards of the Fab Five. And that's what got me into college basketball. And, when we were growing up, it was like Leitner and Hurley in their final years, right? Against this upstart group that then came back the next year and went against this established North Carolina team. And you had rivalries and you had dynasties and things like that. And now it's like, okay, Caleb Love goes from one school to another. You've got, Hunter Dickinson, you got all these guys who are just bouncing around. And it's like, as a fan, how can you get excited about the roster year in and year out when these guys are going to move into town in June? You're not going to meet them or see them until October, and they're going to be gone by March.
Right.
And so that to me feels like we're losing something here. The idea that even after Valpo's 2 best players stated that they were coming back, the fact that I'm hitting refresh on verbalcommits.com up until 10:59 p.m. to make sure that neither one of them entered the portal, what are we doing here? And so to your point, Valpo got the job late. Roger Paul Jr. got the job late last year. They didn't have anything set up. They hardly still have any NIL set up, and that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. But they built a roster from scratch last year with 3 returners, and a lot of those guys didn't work out, and most of them are back in the portal. A couple of them stayed, but most of them are back in the portal. But we're not even talking, and this is the bigger problem that I have, Derek. We're not even talking about guys that are bouncing from college to college to college. Like, one of Valpo's top players, I think he's going to, Isaiah Stafford, I think he's going to have an amazing year this year. And let me tell you, I love Isaiah. I think he's great. I think it took some time for he and I to find a good rapport with each other because he got no reason to trust me. I'm just a reporter sticking a microphone in his face after a loss. This guy he's from Illinois. He went to the same high school, freshman through junior year. His senior year, he went to a high school in Indianapolis. Then he went to Southern Indiana. Then he went to a JUCO. Now he's at Valpo. That's 5 years in a row at a different school with a different coach with different teammates. This year will be the first time in 5 years that he's had the same coach and same teammates, relatively speaking, right? Yeah. I think he's going to take a huge jump forward for the sheer fact that from familiarity. And this is not critical of Isaiah in any way, shape, or form. How are we expected to have a system in place that works when guys are bouncing from school to school to school to school to school? How are we ever? We're just holding on hope that for these 30 games we figure it out, and then we'll just recycle the roster the next year. I'm all for the student athletes being paid. Don't get me wrong. We make a lot of money. I don't make a lot of money. I make some money off of this sport. And it's silly for me to think that I can make money off this sport and the athletes can't. They should be able to. Now, the day that I go up and talk to an athlete and say, I'd like to interview you, and he says, you got to pay me to interview me, I'm done. I'm walking out, right? Anyway, I rambled there, but Valpo's going to be fine. They got a good group of guys coming in. They got a mix of transfers. They got some young guys. They got Homer Drew's grandson, which is going to be a lot of fun. He was at Grand Canyon behind an NBA guy. They've got a kid named All Right. His name's literally ALL Right. That's going to be fun. He's a really player. First player of Mexican descent to enroll at Valpo.
Cool.
Basketball at Valpo. Really interesting guy. I really enjoy. His dad is the CEO of the Cayman Islands Classic, multi-team event that Missouri State was at. Drake was at. Hopefully Valpo will be at. Like, there's got to be, I hope this kid's a star. So Valpo goes to the Cayman Islands. Pick me. I'm going. I think they're going to be a fun team. I really do. And if they're not, they got 11 new guys coming in. That's 11 new guys I get to meet, 11 new stories I get to tell, 11 new relationships I get to forge. And that's what this is really all about for me.
Yeah. I think, and I'm not going to ask you about, just your view of the league as a whole, because at this point, nobody knows.
Yeah.
And like, I saw someone else tweet out like too early preseason rankings.
Well, that's our guy, Tony. Yeah.
It's just like, how would you know? Like, Missouri State's roster is nowhere finished. Guys are coming and going. Like, I saw Wyatt tweet out, 10 minutes ago or something, some new 6'10" guy that's coming in from Morgan State. Like, I don't know anything about the guys. I don't know anything about other schools' guys. So I joked about this on Twitter. For all I care, give everybody a first place vote and just call it a day, because until they figure out a way to gel together and play together, that's all that's really going to matter. And I hate to say it, but this is, probably the new normal for college basketball, specifically for teams at the non-BCS level, because this is what's happening. I mean, gone are the days of your point guard staying for 3-4 years and the Missouri Valley being that league where you're led by a, outstanding duo of guards that are seniors, and that's how you get to the Sweet 16, the NCAA tournament. You got to find talent in unhidden spots and hope that it hits. I mean, that's just what it is. And you got to find a way to get some influx of cash into a program, I think, that sort of pulls guys in to make them want to be there. I mean, I don't know what the answers are. I can't imagine being a coach in this era of college basketball now.
Yeah, well, and look, Valpo's biggest year that they had was 97-98 when they went to the Sweet 16. That team was filled with seniors. They go on that run, and that's what opened my eyes to the school. I knew about them. Like, they'd sent me not recruiting, but they sent me like literature about the school because I went to a Lutheran grade school, so I was on their mailing list. But it wasn't until they made that run that I was like, oh, I'm going to look. I don't know that the Dukes and the Kentuckys and the North Carolinas and all that need a basketball run in order to get people to pay attention to their schools. But it is the lifeblood of small regional schools, right? Think about Drake. If Drake would have been able to close the deal on either one of these last two NCAA tournament games, both games they should have won, mind you, they probably had a good matchup in the next run. They could have made a Loyola run.
Right.
Think about what Loyola became from this. And so now it's bigger than basketball. So now the challenge is man, maybe a smart AD and coach and president and all that might look at this and say, you know what? For this 1 year, we're going to put all of our chips in the middle. Every dollar that comes in here is going to go to NIL, and we're going to build the best roster possible. Because if we go on a run, look what happens.
Yeah.
But what happens if you don't go on a run? Jacoby Gillespie at Belmont just transferred to Maryland for a reported $650,000. What if Maryland doesn't make the tournament? Because that's not the only guy they spent a bunch of money on. What if they don't make the tournament? Now they got Under Armour money there and all that. Like, they'll be fine. But what about these schools that invest so much and then they don't make it? Man, the market's got to correct itself at some point. I don't know when that's going to be, but I don't know. I I'm hoping that I still love watching college basketball 3 or 4 years from now, because it's the greatest sporting event, March Madness, in the world.
Yes.
I happen to really enjoy the conference race, and the sport's changing. There's no question.
Yeah. No, I think you and I are both probably cut from the same cloth outside of our love of the movie Blue Chips. I feel the same way. People thought, why are you tweeting out the Saints? I love the conference race. I love following that from week to week, because people don't understand how short of a time it is to put yourself in position to be ready to have a solid position in the conference tournament. And I think, and that's just not just from working in the Valley. Of course, seeing it all unfold year after year helps. But now as a fan, like it gave me a whole different perspective of what the coaches and the student athletes are going through. So, what are you working on for the Victory Bell? Any stories, features now that we're heading into the spring? I know softball just ended for Valpo. Baseball is going to be wrapping up soon. I'm not sure if they're going to qualify for the conference tournament, but are there features or anything that you can sort of break here?
I got my to use a literary reference, I got my Moby Dick story that I'm this unattainable story that I've been working on, that I've got all the interviews done. I just can't get my head around how to tell it. But I'll give you a little bit of a preview, because like timing, in journalism, timing is so important. And
sure,
if you don't time it right, there's zero reason why I would publish a story about the best way to salt your driveway after a snowstorm. You wouldn't do that right now. So Valpo women's soccer has got 5 players on the roster, had 5 players on the roster this past fall that were in various states of ACL recovery.
Oh,
they had torn their ACL. They had done different things, stuff like that. And so I spent a month interviewing them, those 5. I talked to the surgeon in town that does the surgeries. I talked to the PT, the people who do the rehab. I tried to get to learn, what is it about that little flap of skin that is so damaging to athletes? Why does it happen to women more than men? Why does it happen to soccer players more than other sports? Derek, I've got hours of interviews, right? I just don't know how to tell the story. Do I want to do a 2-part story? Do I want to do an oral history of Valpo women's soccer in the ACL? I've probably got 5 different drafts of this thing going on. And I'm telling you, the opening of it sings. It's really good. But this is the pressure, because and maybe people don't realize this or think about this, but these women gave me their time, and they opened up and were vulnerable. They're crying in front of me about their ACL injuries and what it was like to call their coach and say, "Coach, you're never going to believe this. I tore my ACL. I'm out." My identity as an athlete has been ripped away. Am I going to be able to fulfill my dream of being, because 3 of them did it their senior year of high school after they'd signed.
Wow.
And so I've got all this great stuff, and it's like, I just don't want to mess it up. And I know that if I tell this story the right way, people are going to tell me how great of a job I did. I have nothing to do with it. They did a great job by sharing all this stuff with me. I just have to put it in order. And, there's pressure, because I know that if I do it right, can we go win some awards? Maybe, I don't know, but you don't do it for that.
Right.
I'm doing it. I just want to. So anyways, that's what I'm working on. Now,
awesome.
I was going to have it come out before the NCAA tournament last year. Didn't want to rush it. I was going to do it this spring when some of them returned to play. Didn't finish it the way that I wanted to. Then another player tore her ACL this spring. So now that's another element to the story. And so I think it'll be a summer. I think it's a story that'll come out probably in the next month or so. But I've been saying that for 5 months. But when it does come out, I'm telling you, Derek, the story that these women shared with me, and that the trainers and all this, it's amazing. And I can't wait to have it done. And I can't wait to share that one.
Nice. You got it sounding 30 for 30-ish there.
Trust me, man. Like, again, just the idea of like one of them, like 5 different women, all different scars, all different surgeries, all different rehabs. One of them tore it on Valentine's Day and was back by the fall. Another one tore it on Halloween the previous year and still didn't get back. There's something about this injury is so crazy to me. Yeah. And it's just a little flap of skin that it's so damaging, right? And what it does, not only physically, but mentally, I think is big. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I can't wait till that one's done.
Yeah. And of course, as I said, it's April now, but we'll have student athletes back on campus in the summer workouts. Of course, basketball, those guys do that summer workout stuff. I know the Valley does some summer catch ups with coaches and whatnot. And it'll be August before you know it, you'll be in the classroom. Fall sports will be back and going, and that cycle will get underway again, and you'll be back at it with soccer and football and everything else on campus.
No, I mean, it's the best, right? And what's so much fun with the Victory Bell is I get to do a little bit more recruiting stories, a little bit more like getting to know them stories. And look, it's important because football brings in 40 guys every year. That's 40 new sets of parents. That's 40 new sets of grandparents. And let's get them subscribed to the victorybell.com. Let's go.
There you go. Victoryville.com. Please give Paul a follow at TVB Oren on Twitter. He does it just, I say this about all the beat writers in the league, in the Valley. Just, I don't know. It may, again, probably bias, but they just all do just a tremendous job. And again, that's all I know from my time as following Missouri State and ultimately working in the Valley. But same thing with the radio guys. These guys they're tied to the schools, they're tied to their campuses, and they give you just a great detailed look about what's going on. So anything else you want to plug, man? Victory Bell, Twitter. Are you on Threads yet? You using YouTube? What do you got?
That's the summer project too, is how do I hit the other platforms, right? Yeah. What do I do here and everything like that? I'm going to plug you, Derek. Again, I'm going to say you welcome me with open arms in a space where, when I was like, I mean, I wasn't even the coolest Paul beat reporter when I showed up because the guy from Wichita State, I was like, all right. It was great. And, you left the league, but you didn't leave the impact behind. What you're doing is fantastic. This podcast is great. And I love that you show up every year to Arch Madness. And, look, if Valpo's not going to make a run, I hope Missouri State does, because, you guys have had a pretty tortured last 7 years I've been in the league. Maybe it's time.
Yeah, I don't know when that time's coming. I'm not holding my breath, but I keep telling my wife, the year that they win the Valley tournament, expect that I will be going to the first round NCAA tournament game. I kick myself to this day that I did not go on the Lady Bears run in the Final Four 2001. I did not attend the game, and the Final Four was in St. Louis. What was I thinking? I was a poor college student, and also did not even think about going or trying to go in 99 when the Bears last made the tournament too. So, again, I'm there. I love the team. I love that Konzo's back. I'm a huge favorite, or I am a huge fan of his, just from a person standpoint as well. Like I said, he was in league when I was working there. And I think one of the things I appreciate the most was actually getting the chances to talk to coaches and sitting in coaches meetings and hear about what they do. But then, every once in a while you have a dinner conversation or something with them and you get to talk to him. So he was one of the ones that, and again, I think he actually follows me on Twitter still to this day. And I see it and I hit the like button every time, but I enjoy his podcast. So I'm excited for that standpoint of him being back and seeing what they can do just from a personal standpoint, because I think he's a great leader of men. And hey, if the byproduct is that he's the one that gets them to the NCAA tournament, then that's even better. So, and of course, I got to keep my streak alive at Arch Madness. Haven't missed one since 98. I've been at every Arch Madness since 98. So
there we go. Let's go.
That's got to keep going as a fan or even volunteering like I did this past year. So this has been great, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I keep my NBC beat writers Twitter column, Twitter list going for a reason, and not just for Wyatt, but for you. And now that Todd Golden's back, you guys share all the great stuff. And like I said, keep up the awesome work, and look forward to another hoops season and a full athletic season, not just hoops, coming back, and wishing you all the best with the victory bell.
All right. Hey, Derek, thank you so much, man. It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Persons of Interest. This podcast is a personal project with the goal of sharing stories that might inspire others to create their own path. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a guest suggestion, you can reach Derek on social media at @DDocket. Thank you for listening to Persons of Interest.